Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that literally affects every single one of us, every single day. We're talking about the invisible persuasion tactics that marketers, salespeople, and authority figures use to completely bypass your logic. Now, we all like to think we evaluate ideas based purely on their merit, right? Well, the truth is, we actually tend to evaluate ideas based on who said them and whether we like them. We're going to build your definitive guide to spotting this manipulation and protecting yourself. But to kick things off, we've got to look at a deeply disturbing psychological experiment that proves just how easily our minds can be hacked.
65%. Back in 1961, a psychologist named Stanley Milgram ran one of the most famous and, frankly, most alarming experiments in the history of behavioral science. Ordinary, everyday people were brought into a lab and instructed to administer electric shocks to another person in the very next room. And we're not just talking about mild zaps here. These shocks were increasing in voltage to highly dangerous levels. A staggering 65% of these regular people went all the way to the maximum voltage.
They did this to a complete stranger. And you know what the truly terrifying part is? They didn't even want to do it. Many of them were sweating, visibly uncomfortable, openly hesitating. But they did it anyway simply because a researcher standing right next to them, wearing a lab coat and holding a clipboard, calmly told them to continue. They complied for one reason. Someone displaying the signals of authority commanded them to do it.
So this perfectly illustrates what's known as authority compliance. What is actually going on in your brain here? Well, authority doesn't just grab your attention, it literally flips the critical thinking switch in your brain to the off position. The moment someone signals authority to you, your brain shifts completely out of evaluation mode and right into acceptance mode. You literally stop asking, hey, is this right? And you immediately start asking, how do I comply?
Let's look at how this is used against us. Weapon 1. Fake authority.
This really highlights the sheer absurdity of our own cognitive biases. You see, basic trappings, things like job titles, an expensive watch, or a uniform, trigger our compliance completely automatically. Think about it. If a person in casual clothes tells you something, you might just brush it off. But if that exact same person puts on a white doctor's coat and a stethoscope, suddenly their words are treated as absolute gospel. If someone in a t-shirt gives you an order, you'd question it, right? But if they're in a police uniform, you comply. The exact same words are ignored or blindly followed based entirely on an outfit. The information didn't change at all, just the signal changed. Watch how this builds step by step in marketing. You start with a raw, simple, everyday product. Then, the marketer slaps an as-seen in Forbes badge on it. Instantly, right before your eyes, that product psychologically grows in perceived value. Next, they toss on a quote from a certified industry expert, or maybe an award badge. Now, the product itself hasn't changed a single bit. Physically, it is the exact same item, but it's been surrounded by these manufactured and frankly often unverifiable authority signals.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. When you see those fancy press mentions, the certifications, or the expert endorsements, your brain doesn't actually verify the product. Honestly, it rarely even verifies the signals. It just automatically responds to them. You reach for that product confidently because you evaluated the manufactured signals around it, not the actual item itself.
All right, moving on to weapon 2, manufactured liking. Now, these are two entirely different weapons, but guess what? They both lead to the exact same destination, getting you to say yes. While authority forces compliance from above, liking is incredibly potent because it sneaks right past your defenses. You don't even feel like you're being manipulated or influenced at all. You just feel like you're chatting with a friend.
So how is this done? Well, there are 4 specific triggers that salespeople use to artificially build this trust. First up is similarity. We just naturally like people who are like us, whether they dress like us or subtly mirror our body language. Second is physical attractiveness. Our brains have this weird glitch where we automatically assume attractive people are smarter and more trustworthy. Third is familiarity. Simply being exposed to someone repeatedly creates a sense of liking, even if they're a total stranger. And fourth is association. We like people who are connected to things we already like. That is exactly why you always see car salespeople standing next to expensive sports cars they don't even own.
To really grasp the sheer scale of this manipulation, check this out. 13,001. That record belongs to a man named Joe Girard. He's actually in the Guinness Book of World Records as the greatest salesman in the world, having sold an unbelievable 13,001 cars in his career.
So how did he do it? What was his big magic trick? Well, it was actually incredibly simple. Every single month, Joe Girard sent a little greeting card to every past customer he'd ever had. And inside that card, it just said 3 simple words: I like you. That's it. This brilliantly proves that manufactured liking scales incredibly well. When people feel liked, they reciprocate that liking, and ultimately, they buy.
A classic example of this in action is the famous Tupperware party. These parties were built entirely from the ground up on the principle of liking. Think about it. The host is your friend, your neighbor, someone you already know and trust. So when she recommends a product, you aren't really sitting there evaluating the merit of a plastic container, you're evaluating your relationship with the host. Saying no to the plastic container feels like saying no to your friend. You're buying the relationship, which makes saying yes vastly easier than evaluating the product itself.
Okay, it's time for your ultimate defense guide.
Here is your very first ultimate defense mechanism, specifically against fake authority. When you feel yourself getting swayed by a supposed expert, an impressive title, or a uniform, you need to pause and ask yourself, is this true, regardless of who said it? You have to force your brain to realize that a white lab coat, a fancy job title, or an as seen in Forbes badge does not magically make terrible advice correct. Strip away the messenger and look only at the message.
And here is your second defense mechanism, this time against liking. Whenever you're in a transaction with someone who is incredibly warm, friendly, and just super relatable, ask yourself, would I say yes to this exact same offer if I didn't like them? This challenges you to mentally separate that friendly salesperson from the actual transaction in front of you. If the answer is no, then you know for a fact that liking is doing the heavy lifting, not logic.
Now, to be fair, it is important to briefly contrast these manipulative tactics with ethical businesses and creators. Manufactured manipulation relies on fake signals, rented sports cars, and forced similarity. Ethical influence, on the other hand, comes from actually doing the hard work. It's earned credentials. It's building genuine relationships over time by actually caring about outcomes and being truly interested in people. The weapons of influence actually work at their absolute full power when they are real and earned, compounding naturally over time.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to take away from this explainer today. If you don't evaluate ideas on their own merit, and you only automatically evaluate who said them or what they were wearing, who is really making your decisions? The next time someone points to a shiny badge or flashes a warm smile to get you to comply, take a step back, flip your critical thinking switch back to on, and take control of your own mind. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.